Hello, boys. This is White Pill Media, and welcome back to the Trough.
Goodness, strength, valor. Charming sing-along. Now let's get down to business. I've waited a long time for this day.
This week, we have a bit of a variety pack going on. We have Improvidence. This is a little, novella is the correct term, by David Harrod. This was interesting. It's kind of post-apocalyptic, but the world has rebuilt by now, or mostly civilization has definitely returned. It's about this man and this scout. They're going out to investigate this fort. There's a lot going on in it. It is a shorter read, but it's only $5, and it probably took a little under 2 hours, but I like that. We'll get into that. We have Skirmishes in the Atrium. This is by Arthur Powell. And this is poems, and he has a few little essays, I guess, about poetry and about kind of right-wing art, why it's important to preserve it. I'll admit, poetry is not my thing, and I don't have a lot to say about this, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit. There was some stuff I liked, and I think if you enjoy poetry, then you might like it more than I did. I still thought it was fine. I don't regret buying it or reading it. We have an older book to go through. This is Gods and Fighting Men by Lady Gregory. This is about the mythological cycle of Irish mythology and the Fenian cycle, which is about Fionn McCool. And yeah, it's interesting. It's about the Tuatha De Danann, old Irish gods, and then Finn McCool and his Fianna. It's interesting. It's not really a recommendation for most people, but we'll talk about it later. There's definitely some really excellent good parts in there, and I wanted to do a closer reading. I had read this before, but I had skimmed some parts because some of it is not very interesting, and it gets kind of repetitive because that's just kind of how more or less some of the writing style. We have Anvil. This is the third issue of the Iron Age magazine. They're kind of normie con people, anti-woke, if you will, sort of doing pulp stuff. And this is mixed as well. We'll get into it. And finally, the only real novel we have this month is Meme, and this is by Max Lath. And this was interesting. I guess the simplest way I can describe it is we have Marcus, who is a black man. He is I suppose the best way to describe him is a based black guy. And then we have Sophia, who is a Jewish Antifa reporter kind of chick, and their relationship. And there's a lot to get into with that one. That one I'm somewhat mixed on, but we're going to talk about all of these. There's going to be timestamps below for you to go to each book. I'll have links for you to go to purchase. And yeah, that's about it. One last thing. So this week for the Trough, I tried another pizza, and I'm getting closer. I still don't quite have the dough correct, but we're learning. I tried putting cheese on first and then sauce on top of that to see if the cheese would kind of bond better with the crust, so that it wouldn't slip and slide so much when you're cutting it up. I had better results with the processed grated cheese after I grated it, rather than fresh mozzarella. So I don't know. I'm going to play around with it. So we're starting with Meme. I think I have the most to say about this one. And have full transparency, I was sent a free digital version of Meme by the author. And I just wanted to be transparent about it. It didn't affect my opinion or whatever on the book, and I did purchase a physical copy for myself with my own money, so just to be on the level of everybody. So Meme, as I said, I'm a bit mixed on it. It has a really interesting premise. We have a based black guy who supports Donald Trump and hangs out with white identitarians. And then we have Sophia, the Jewish Antifa woman who also writes for Huffington Post, and their kind of relationship together. It's a very unique and interesting premise, but I'm still kind of mixed on it. If the premise kind of interests you, maybe check it out for yourself. Otherwise, we are going to just start with spoilers. One thing at the start that I don't really care for, the first page in Meme is just a dictionary definition of what a meme is. I don't like this. I think it's kind of boring. I don't think it really does anything for voice. It doesn't, get me in Marcus's head or tell me anything about the world, really. I think this could be cut. And then our first chapter is like a flash forward chapter. Like movies do this sometimes, and I guess books do too, where it's like, here's this thing going on. Then we're in this scene for a few pages. Then now we're cut back to back then, and then we have to reach that point. So I also don't really love that. I feel like just starting with your feet grounded in like a chapter 1 is fine. I think that's a bit better, but because you don't know exactly what's going on in chapter 1, you're really confused, and it's like I already picked up the book to read, you know what I mean? So if I'm already reading the book, I'm not going to just throw it down if it doesn't immediately hook me within the first 5 or 6 pages. So I felt that could have been cut and just gone off chapter 1, because in chapter 1 we have this mock underground railroad slavery thing where you have non-white students fake whip white students. And this might be something that actually happens. I think there are some weird reenact slavery things, but white people have to act as the slaves. I think that sort of happens. And Marcus is kind of into it. And the woman that he's with is kind of into it. This is Sophia. And he's attracted to her. There's some weird choices for Marcus's voice. He talks a lot about scripts, about lighting, cameras, this is what the director would see or whatever. He's trying to frame his world in these kind of movie terms. And I thought it would be more interesting if this was actually used hypothetically, if Marcus was a big film buff, if there was actually a documentary being done, because that's brought up at one point that there might be a documentary at the end of the book based on all the stuff, all the kind of crazy antics that happened. But there's no documentary, there's no anything, but he just kind of talks in these film terms, and that just feels kind of odd. I would say lean more into it, there is a documentary and he's assisting in its production, or I feel like it could just kind of go. But this is just an act to make whites apologize for privilege. We have McGibbs, who is this fat professor. He's this self-hating white guy, and he seems to be even though he's a super lefty, he's also kind of angry that Marcus is looking at Sophia. There is a lot of smoking weed in this book. There is a lot of that. White Pill Media is not a weed smoker. We don't do that.
Curtis, what is that?
Oh, come on, Derry.
Weed is for niggers. Put that away right now. A little self-respect.
We don't really care for that, but it is here. And Marcus's best friend is TJ, and TJ is a drug dealer and a white nationalist kind of a guy. They're just kind of hanging out. Marcus works as a server at this restaurant, and TJ's just kind of doing whatever because his family has money, and they like to just go online and troll people with right-wing talking points. That's kind of their relationship. We have on page 26 the origin of the word kike is explained. It feels somewhat not needed. There's a comedy pause, and I was kind of questioning who the book is for exactly, because I'm is this for kind of people on this side of things? Is this kind of for normie cons, kind of maybe Trump supporting conservatives who might pick this book up? I feel some of this stuff is more for them because it kind of spoon feeds you some information. It does this sometimes, but they do some digging on Sophia. Sophia is not only just this Antifa Jewish journalist, she's also bisexual, polyamorous. Her dad is this super wealthy finance guy, right? We have some stuff with Marcus at his job at the restaurant. He doesn't like his homosexual manager and how many gays now work there. There is this weird kind of cuckold stuff where maybe this couple is making a proposal to him, but while we do spend time with work and we introduce this kind of couple thing, nothing happens with work later on or with the couple. There's no kind of fallout. They both just kind of fall off to the side. The book's building up a little slowly. He's kind of interested in Sophia. He wants to know more about Sophia. We have several pages dedicated to kind of owning the libs. They're just kind of trolling people online. And they also interact with Sophia online. And yeah, it's just like throwing out some like talking points and some ideas that I think people that already kind of know this stuff, they already like they know it, right? So it's not like the most interesting, but audiences for people who don't necessarily know this stuff, then they might enjoy it more. You know what I mean? Okay. We got college party. TJ is like dealing drugs and shit. We have, I guess this is something that people do, but like there's a woman there that like they chug alcohol through their rectums, I guess, to make them very drunk very fast. Whatever, Whitefield Media doesn't know anything about that, and I don't want to know. We have some interaction with Sophia. She like suspects / knows that he's kind of a right-wing dude, but she's also interested in him. Is this just to get more information out of him or what? She kind of wants to make him her pet project, and they end up having sex at this party, and then she's gone in the morning when they wake up. We do have a scene where Marcus is sitting in class. We have the fat, self-hating professor. Marcus is angry that whites self-hate. He's the black guy that hates woke shit. He's literally owning the libs here. And then we have like a base black guy. People like film it, and then it starts like trending online. He literally quotes FBI statistics. And then the fat professor is trying to keep things calm while there's this mixed race girl, Leslie, who Marcus calls half white to kind of dig at her. But Marcus is also mixed race, but I guess his admixture is more black than hers because Marcus is described as having a white mother later on. While the scene is going on, it's like, I guess it's like, the scene is like somewhat humorous, but it's also like, hey, did you actually know the police aren't actually discriminating against blacks. Blacks just commit more crime disproportionate to whites or whatever. So it's like we have this little like back and forth with Marcus and Leslie and this liberal professor. But again, it's just kind of like an audience question because it's like, all right, I know this. You know what I mean? Like, I already know this. But we have Leslie freak out, attack the professor. Marcus's dad is actually a economics professor, but he's still like hanging out with Sophia, even though Sophia is like a pretty dangerous character to have around because she could also like dig up information on TJ and whatever, but he's drawn to her, right? He's drawn to her. They're hanging out a bit. Sophia has daddy issues for sure. We have chapter 11. I did think this was cute. They do have a little like security system whenever someone like comes into the house. It's a chirp chirp, like a smoke alarm. That was cute. That was a nice detail. But Marcus's mom is white. I think in the digital version I had, which wasn't there were some changes made to it. I think before it was made into a physical edition. Like Marcus's mom was described like as a high yellow woman. I think that meant like a higher like admixture of like black but still like mixed race. But in this, I think she's just very streamlined from what I could tell because I didn't like reread the book in the physical version. But Marcus's mom seems to be just white. So he is mixed race, but I guess it doesn't really show for him that much. At this point, you're kind of questioning, like, what's kind of the driving factor for the story? Where is it kind of leading to? I guess I'm sorry, I didn't say where we were. We're in 2016. We're in Cincinnati. Donald Trump has not been elected president yet. So I guess we're kind of building to that. We have another party, and Marcus is there to act as TJ's bodyguard. He's done this before. And TJ's like doing this drug deal, and he's also there with Sophia, and shit gets out of control at the party where Mark doesn't stand up for TJ as he's getting fucked over on this weed deal from Akil and some of Akil's friends. And Sophia is like threatening to break up with him, and he's kind of like this desperate little worm trying to stay with her. And Antifa burst in. They get photos of TJ to dox him. TJ also gets beaten and robbed after the drug deal, and then Marcus doesn't do anything for TJ, and TJ just kind of limps home. This was on page 163. So after TJ gets robbed, Antifa shows up, and they are literally kicking TJ when he's down, laughing at him as he seethes in pain. No one stood by TJ's side while he waited and bled. And Marcus isn't there for his friend. And I guess I would call this the climax of the book, but there's not so much of like a driving force that's really propelling us forward. I mean, there is like Sophia and her little threats that like she could expose Marcus at any point, and just kind of like publish an article about him. But I don't know. I feel like it meanders a little bit, but it's not like horrible meandering in terms of like writing, but I felt like there could have been a little more drive to get us here. After this event on page 179, I did find this did really stand out to me, where I found this very, very unbelievable. TJ and Marcus are friends again, even after Marcus left him to be doxxed, to be beaten, to be robbed. Oh, and TJ's information was published by Sophia, and he is still dating Sophia at this point. So Marcus is really a bad dude. For me, this was like way over the line, and I actually felt that maybe something else is being set up at this point. I'll get into that later on, but TJ has brought Marcus into this restaurant, and there's this white identitarian or nationalist meeting going on, and this really threw me for a loop. This is not something I can really believe, even if TJ is kind of vouching for him or bringing him in. This seems kind of crazy to me. And like some of the guys, like they voiced some objections at first, but like they show them like the viral video TJ had of like owning that girl Leslie and that liberal professor at college, and that's enough for them to kind of settle down. I will say this, white media doesn't speak for everyone, but the fact that there's no like fracturing here, that the group doesn't have a complete fucking meltdown over this. There's one thing you can say, it's that dissidents love infighting, but this causes no issues whatsoever. White media doesn't know everyone, but I don't know anyone who would work like this, where someone could just stroll in with someone who's not white, and then you just show a video of them like owning the libs, and everything's fine. That doesn't work. I think that really doesn't work, but I understand it's needed to like keep the story going for this event to happen, but it just wasn't super believable. Some like funny antics at the meeting. They all kind of vote to make him an honorary member, so everyone kind of hails Marcus. It's noted that 14 people raised their arms to do so. So we have 14 guys. That's cute. And they all vote to grant him entry, but still, it doesn't exactly work for me. Marcus is kind of initially accepted into this group, and then our next scene is there's this kind of camp out deep in the woods. There's about 120 guys there, and these are more white nationalists. And there's kind of this initial standoff where not everyone knew that Marcus was coming, but the guys are more or less willing to have him there. And again, just for believability, this doesn't really work for me, but we'll just go with it. And there's one guy that puts his foot down and says that he's not welcome, and the group defers to this guy, so Marcus has to go home. But the difference is, like, TJ cares that Marcus is being sent away. He says, hey, I can walk with you back to the truck. Let me know if you get home safe. And the scene just kind of deflates from there, where Marcus isn't really allowed to be with these guys, but he's still kind of on the outskirts, and TJ is going deeper and deeper into this stuff. However, I will say something that I thought was going to happen and I thought would be like really interesting, but the book would be like incredibly fucking dark, is that as revenge for not defending him at the party, I thought that maybe TJ was going to set Marcus up. Now he has lured him out into the woods, and these white nationalists were going to either like beat him, maybe not to death, but kind of fuck him up pretty bad and like leave him out there. And I thought maybe this is the climax, but that does not happen. So we'll just go on. Marcus is just kind of going to gyms now. He's listening to podcasts that TJ's on, getting less shifts at work. He's just not doing very well, doesn't really care about college. He kicks Sophia out. It's kind of questioning like, why now after all this time? But it happened. He's finally done it. We have this kind of long drawn out election night for Trump being elected. And the night that Trump is elected, Sophia also tells him that she is pregnant with his child. Doesn't want to do like an abortion or anything. He wants to be there for Sophia. So they have this sit down with Sophia's father. but we cut away from it. We cut away at the knees from it, and Marcus says in the book he's not going to discuss that night, which I felt like kind of a mistake. I feel like that could have been interesting or dramatic or kind of funny. On page 230, they're kind of reveling in Trump's victory because some leftists are having like a little parade or whatever. They're like complaining about the election, so they go there to harass them. And on 230, Marcus like briefly touches on the fact that he has been feeding Sophia information, and he has been party to half a dozen guys being doxxed. So I'll tie that in later at the end, but Marcus just isn't this innocent little guy who's just kind of tagging along and getting kind of deeper and deeper. But he blows off Sophia, and Sophia is now in New York. She outs him in an article where he's like doxxed, like blah, 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 this right-wing guy. There's no discussion about fallout with his family related to his father's job as a professor at a college. And the kid is born. At the same time, Marcus gets a phone call that TJ is dead, and Marcus also got a DNA test on the baby. And we're very removed from TJ's death. We just hear about it from Marcus sitting down at a diner with one of the guys that TJ was friends with, and we just hear about it from this way. And it's very, very detached. Basically, there was like a rally. Some Antifa got in there, and then like campus police, and the police just weren't really doing anything to break it up, and TJ was killed during it. And then we have our last chapter, which I did not really care for. I felt it was a little melodramatic for me. We are back at the scene. So in chapter 1, we were like in New York. There's like the Wall Street, like the bowl, and then they made that statue of like the little girl. Marcus is back there again. And the first sentence for the last chapter is, we live in a society. And there's a little mantra going on throughout this chapter. We live in a society. We live in a society. We live in a society. I found it somewhat melodramatic. Sophia shows up. Marcus is lying there with like some legal yellow notepads, and he is cutting his feet and dipping a quill into his blood and then writing the story of like him and TJ in this, and it just felt like somewhat melodramatic. I think it's probably because I don't really like Marcus, and then he's just writing all this out in blood. It turns out that the child is Achilles, the basketball player who also like robbed and mugged TJ, and it's not Marcus. And that's kind of it. It just kind of leaves there with him like finishing writing the story. So I had issues overall with the book. I would say choosing Marcus, like our based black guy, as our vehicle into the story was an interesting choice. I feel like it was kind of necessary, because if your audience is more kind of conservative normies or whoever, they would immediately drop the book if we were placed in TJ's head, because they wouldn't want to be like directly in a white guy's white supremacist head, or white nationalist, whatever you want. But if the POV is in Marcus, the black best friend who's sharing these talking points and these ideas, well, then they might not put it up. They might not put it down right away. They might soak up some of these talking points. They might think about it a little bit. So I can understand like the choice to choose Marcus as the vehicle. But there is a bit of an issue, because people that are already on this side of things aren't going to want to engage or feel anything for Marcus, because he is just a based black guy. He doesn't belong with these white identitarians, and he's always going to be an outsider. He's always not going to be not welcome. We still have on page 230 that he's responsible for like at least 6 guys being doxxed and maybe really screwing up their lives, their jobs, their families. So he's not a like sympathetic character in that way either. He's just kind of maybe that's the point. He is just kind of a camera into this world. And maybe that's why we're using kind of the video and movie terms. But I feel like there's this great conflict between the people that like get it. They probably would enjoy this less, whereas the people who don't really get it, they would be more fine with like Marcus and kind of having stuff explained to them and doing like the own the libs kind of things. The hard stuff, like the antics, like the premise of the book is like a based black guy hooking up with a Jewish Antifa journalist. That's a great premise. It promises a lot of like antics and craziness and just wild shit. I don't think the book quite lives up to that. It feels very kind of muted and more grounded. Like the scene of her extremely wealthy, successful Jewish father having to deal with her having to deal with his daughter being knocked up by a right-wing black guy. That scene isn't there. It doesn't exist in the book. We don't get a scene about Marcus's family having to deal with their son being labeled a white supremacist, and maybe there's some fallout for their own lives. That scene is not there. They go to this rally to mock leftists crying about the election of Donald Trump, and TJ is arrested there. But like in terms of like crazy stuff they get up to, it's like they put flyers up around campus, they troll people online, they do like there's that fake slave thing at the start of it, and I don't think it goes like kind of as crazy as it could go. And there is TJ's death at a rally, but we get this secondhand, like more than secondhand, because it's a guy who was there who saw what happened, and then this guy is feeding this to Marcus. So we're very removed from kind of the insanity of that scene. Feels like some of like our crazier stuff is cut off at the knees. Yeah, I think it's a kind of a conflict of like audiences where it's like the people that kind of know about this book and would probably check it out are also the guys that probably don't really care for Marcus as a protagonist, and they kind of already know some of the stuff like talking points wise, and there's not really like the super crazy stuff that would maybe help balance that out for that other half of kind of the maybe target audience. Marcus is like the vehicle into this story, but I don't really care about Marcus, and I don't care if he's happy. I don't care if he like cuts up his feet, because I'm just like, I don't know, like, you know, he did dox at least 6 guys, you know, he did cause a bunch of shit. He's just not a very good person. So that's a little difficult for me. I think the point of the book is kind of to show off TJ, which is fine. Like, that's fine. It's to portray like WNs as something like kind of digestible, and I can get that. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it needed like a little more craziness or something. I understand like the choice to not have the book be from like TJ's point of view. So I probably repeated myself a bunch, and I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I was just kind of mixed on the book overall. I think I probably would be interested in like reading more by the author. I would have to like see what it's going to be. Gods and Fighting Men. I don't have a ton to say about this. I would say this isn't much of a recommendation. I sort of had to force myself to finish this by setting like read this amount of pages per day and just get it done. But if you are very, very interested in Irish mythology, I think this is a great source for the mythological cycle, which is about the Tuatha Dé Danann, the Irish pagan gods. And it also has the Fenian cycle with Finn McCool and his Fianna. So it's a good resource for that, but it can be repetitive in just like how the stories were written back then, and just kind of dense, and sometimes there's just not a lot there. I did find stuff for me to use that I'm going to use in like later books or Dualhan, so it wasn't totally a waste of time, and I was happy to finally like read it all the way through this time. Nice little passages at the end where they're talking about like getting Irish nationalists together, and they're just recording all these myths, and they're sending them out to Irish people to like stoke the flames of Irish nationalism and to build this like cultural identity. It's cool. That stuff's interesting. And yeah, they're playing like good stuff. I did like the mythological stuff a lot more. I feel like this is something that was added, but there was something at one point in the Fenian cycle, and Finn McCool is like the leader of this band of like mythical warriors. And at one point, they have literally King Arthur come over. He robs Finn McCool. He goes back to Britain, and then Finn and his guys go over to Britain, kill a bunch of his men, and then they make King Arthur their prisoner for life. You might say that could have been that might not. Could say that perhaps that was created to be anti-British, but yeah, that was fun. That was entertaining. There's a lot of little good stuff in there. But overall, not much of a recommendation unless you like kind of dense mythological stuff, because it was still kind of a struggle for me, and I like a lot of this stuff. So don't have too much to say there. Skirmishes. I also don't have too much to say here. This is a little book of poetry. Poetry is not really my thing, and these are kind of shorter poems. I feel like maybe I would enjoy longer poems because these just all like felt fine, but I also don't really care for like flash fiction. You know, it doesn't really do much for me, but I want to give it a shot just to try it. These poems are grouped together by like blood, nature, energy, anger. They're all on the shorter end of things. If you like poetry and if you want to support this side, then I would consider this. There are 4 small essays about the value of poetry inside. I'll read some of those now. Why poetry should matter to right-wing dissidents. Think Breitbart or PragerU sputtering away about the latest outrage and about how facts should matter. The unfortunate truth is that facts don't matter much, neither does logic. Rhetoric matters, emotional persuasion. If one looks at some of the success people have against things like CRT, it is largely due to good rhetoric instead of abstract logic and reason. Stop it with the Kipling. Want to be a successful artist to the right today, die 100 years ago. So I did enjoy like the little essays more, but still, like if you like poems, I didn't like hate any of the poems here. It just, I don't know. I just like novels or kind of longer form stuff more. So check that out if you're looking for some poetry stuff. Improvidence. This is a recommendation. This is a cheap, quick read. It was enjoyable. It is about a man who is with the engineering corps of these people called the Moralists. We are in Ohio, and it is the 81st year of consecrated moralism. He has just graduated. He got a letter from his dad to go to this fort to get a job. And apparently his father is somebody that we don't know, but he is important. He's a somebody. And he's just kind of doing his job. He's taking reports. He's kind of a clerk, right? And while he's in town, he's given readings by these families' daughters on page 3. Not a one of them held me past the first verse. And it's kind of like he's so above it all. He's not attracted to them in any way. And we kind of have a bit of an unreliable narrator. We'll get into that later on. He's finally given a mission to go inspect an abandoned fort and determine what it would take to get it up and running again. Because if they don't take this fort, then maybe the Virginians will. So again, it's like something has happened. It's kind of post-apocalyptic, but they're definitely like regional powers at this point, right? And the people going on this trip is just going to be him and this man, Jeremy. And Jeremy is like this scout, kind of a frontiersman. And they're on their little journey. On page 7, we have an unsavory incident. This feels like maybe this was a lie. The wife of this man, like they stayed at this house for the evening. And the woman of the house tried to seduce him. And this felt like maybe this was a lie. We'll get into this later on. We get some world building. We get some cool stuff. Like there's like a down, like, you know, those big... those huge like electric windmill kind of a deals. There's some of them that are just like rotting on the landscape. There's some mystery about the battalion that once commanded the fort. They vanished without a trace. You know, what's going on with that? We come to this little area where there's this family. There's Bethy, there's Anne, there's Louise. And the daughter Bethy, she seduces or kind of seduces our main character. She is labeled as like the instigator of the act, and he succumbed to it, right? He had no choice. He succumbed to it. But after this, he promises that he'll be back for Bethy. He's not sure if he'll actually do it, but he makes this promise. You know, he's trying to make himself kind of look good. And then out in the wild, we find plastic and then a bunch of dead children. And finding plastic is apparently a big deal. Like, it's going to make them very rich. And he promises Jeremy that... he'll make it so that when they're claiming this land, that Jeremy will have a claim over all this plastic. So he'll be an incredibly wealthy man. We get to the fort. It's abandoned. They don't know exactly what happened here, but there is a journal that does note to keep your eyes straight about Bethy and Anne's house, and he's very jealous of this. Like the men were kind of attracted to her, or that she was trying to seduce these men, and so he's jealous of this. On page 44, they get brought into this native village, right? Jeremy does not want to go there. He does not like it. He says this is not a typical tribal greeting. He says we really need to get away. Something's not right. But the captain insists on staying because part of their mission was also to speak to the wild natives out here. So also when they're at the native children, there was a little detail that I did not care for because there's some children. There's a child that's running around nude, and I don't know. I feel like the captain made too much of a note of it, like description-wise. So that kind of raised an eyebrow for me, and I hoped I was wrong. But then to conclude negotiations, they bring out women for the captain and Jeremy, and I don't like kind of... And I don't like the captain's descriptions and him smelling them. Like a younger girl selected for him and an older girl. And he wonders if he could wring the younger one's narrow thigh with just one hand. I struggled with my want to speak, but found myself fumbling. But they realize that this is just a trap and that they're about to be killed. And it's not they realize, it's the captain realizes. And he's able to save Jeremy, who has let his guard down completely, and he's being massaged by one of the girls. And this is another incident that we'll get back to later, but it's kind of an unreliable narrator. This felt a little doubtful to me. And following this, they run away from the camp and they go into the sewer systems, and they're trying to lose the natives down there. And Jeremy ends up saving them in the tunnels, but they have to split up. And the captain is the first one to make it back to Bethy, and she says that she's pregnant, so it looks like they're going to get married. But Louise does not like this and wants to kill him. And Louise gives him like a kind of interesting talk on like page 66 and 67. I don't know. I don't know how much of this is unreliable or not, but it kind of seems like Bethy and Anne sort of control Louise. And they're also like the skeletons of children out here as well, like they found out with the natives. And I don't know if this is like abortionist stuff, because that's like a group that's mentioned, or what it is exactly. I think they kind of kill their male children, kind of a deal. But Louise doesn't know that the gun's not working. Captain's able to get the drop on him and kill him. And Anne just kind of welcomes him back. And it's just like, oh, Louise did something stupid. Welcome home, Captain. And then Jeremy just shows up, and then they're back to Ohio. So they get back, they give their reports, and then on page 73, this is right after they've given their reports, we have the men of Ohio. I was the boy who had ridden through the wilds and come home a man, more than just a man actually, a hero who'd risked life and limb against the unknown and overcome the savage devil himself. Jeremy waited for me a few steps beyond the stoop. We summarized our meeting not to any true purpose, but merely because it already repeated amphitheatrally in our minds at that moment, and therefore similarly echoed forth from our lips. We clasped hands to say our goodbyes. Jeremy, thank you again for everything. Please know that I have not forgotten my promise. I remain your advocate, and I will see you settled in the fashion you deserve as all this resolves. I never doubted it, and I feel likewise, Captain. This is phrased very, very awkwardly. Also have like him just not doing anything about these rumors going around that he's this big hero, when really Jeremy basically did everything. He doesn't do anything to quell these rumors. He doesn't go out of his way to say, well, Jeremy's the real hero. I was just kind of brought along for it all. And there is that moment back at that tribal camp where supposedly the captain is the one who knew that it was a trap, and he saved Jeremy, who was getting massaged by a girl, even though Jeremy was the one to say, we need to get the fuck out of here. This isn't safe. This is bad. That doesn't exactly line up, right? It doesn't exactly line up because the captain is the more lecherous one, or like sex is kind of forced upon him throughout the story. It's like it's sort of forced upon him. Like this wife tried to cheat on her husband with it. Bethy like straddled him. She was the one that really wanted it, and he just went along with it. He was just kind of whittled down and forced to do it. And I just don't trust our main character. I don't like him. I don't like that he notes the child in the camp. I don't like that he notes the very young girl in the camp. So it seems like he would be the one who is kind of overcome, and Jeremy is the one that saved them, and Jeremy kind of did everything. Because it completely doesn't make sense that Jeremy wants to go on like page 44, and then on page 49, Jeremy is the one that is saved by the captain. It doesn't really work. And it's sort of like, it's like, I don't think I really buy that Jeremy just let his guard down. That just feels like bullshit to make the captain look like a hero too. Like this is just, it doesn't really make sense. And it feels like on 73, we're using this promise of this plastic mine to make him like keep to the captain's version of events. You know what I mean? Meets Bethy again. He calls her, she was the tribal girl who pulled at my arm. She was Goodman Thomas's wife. She was that naked toddler running through the tribal camp. She was every girl and woman I'd ever seen since crossing the Ohio River, and yet she was also Bethy. I don't know. It feels weird to just like throw in all of these women that he's kind of been like sexually attracted to and like compare it to Bethy. And then like there's also like a child in that list. So it just feels very weird, very uncomfortable. I don't know. I might have been reading into it a little bit. And it's like also in the tribal camp, it's like he's forced to pick the young girl that's given to him by the chieftain. Like, oh no, I really don't want this. But it kind of feels like he kind of does. I don't know. He's imagining like wringing her thigh with his hand. You know what I mean? Like, that's not fucking normal. And just on 73, it feels like there's a little pressure on Jeremy. Like, hey, just a reminder, I can be the guy that gives you this claim in the plastic mine, or I can take it away. Whatever you want, Jeremy. But maybe just let these rumors go. And also, I was definitely the one who saved you at the tribal camp. And maybe Jeremy just goes, yeah, whatever. I'm still like a hero in this version of events, so that's fine. The captain just doesn't look as incompetent as he is. And then on 79, so like they're back in town. He's kind of taking care of Bethy and Anne. They're sort of controlling him. I don't know if it's because like they're women and they're just kind of evil, or maybe he does like want it. He wants these women to kind of control him and own him. I'm not really sure either way because he's unreliable. And he ends up staying with Bethy at the end. And you know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh, I resisted for so long, but then I gave in. And it's like, has he been longhoused here? Like, has he been longhoused? Because now he's having sex with Bethy. And then on page 80, Anne also starts doing sexual things with him. So there's that. And he's succumbing to it. I don't know. Has he been longhoused? Oh, no. I have to have sex with his mom and her daughter. Oh, the horror. They cook and clean for me. Oh, but I can't pray to God anymore. Whatever. I don't give a shit. Oh, but on page 81, Major Patel shows up and he throws out several pointed questions over my measurement methodology and what he considered factual inaccuracies in my journal, which I did my best to resolve, although not completely to his satisfaction. So I think he's unreliable. I don't know exactly what, you know what I mean, like the full extent of what his lies are, but it feels like the thing with Jeremy, that feels like he's applying a little pressure to make a version of events like go his way. Also, at the camp, that feels like there was some redaction going on there. So I'm not 100% on it, but we have like the governor's ball at the very end. It's nice. We have a good little conversation with the governor, and then Dawn would bring the first day of the 82nd year of consecrated moralism, but I had not lived to see it. I had died in the mountains of West Virginia, not murdered, but lost, and a different man had returned in my stead. When my daughter was born, for it was surely a girl in Bethy's womb, I dreaded meeting the man who would be her father. That was a very nice ending. So, yeah, it was like a 2-hour read. I think there's a lot in there. It was very cool. I don't know if there will be more, like in this world or whatever, but I would definitely read more. I don't like love unreliable narrators. It gives you a lot to like talk about and to think, but it's also like it could all be bullshit. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm way overreading it. I don't know, but it was enjoyable. Yeah, I think it's like $5. So yeah, I think that's definitely worth your time. So Anvil number 3. I've covered the Anvil series before. It's kind of, just kind of like anti-woke guys that are making their own magazine. It's kind of pulpy and whatever. It's got like short stories, some comics, there's art, there's some reviews. It's interesting enough. I might be done with it though, because like it feels like okay, but not great. I might like want to focus on like kind of other authors. This was an all right edition, but yeah, I'm going to be more brief with this because I didn't have very strong feelings on it overall. First Anvil story feels a little repetitive. It's like the Mongols have like rounded up this guy from a village and they're laying siege to the city, so they're just throwing in people. And this guy, he ends up like breaking into this palace that was abandoned, and he ends up like unleashing this woman who's been locked in this room, and it turns out that this woman's name is Lilith, and that is a horrible name because the woman, it turns out she's like evil. She's this biological weapon, but just by calling her Lilith, like there was a pretty decent job going on of just like building up like the creepiness factor around her and how she seemed to like change slowly over a few days. But by calling her Lilith, you immediately just set off little alarm bells, right? It's like calling a character Lucifer. Like, are they going to be bad? Yes. So I think that's definitely a misstep. And it feels a little repetitive where he's just hanging out with Lilith in this palace. He eats with her. Then he goes up to like this observation platform to look at like what's going on with the siege. And then it's just kind of a continuation of this for like days and days and days. So I think there need to be a little breakup here, something to change it up. Second story, they're like on a medical ship flying around trying to get some people to this planet to heal them. This had like really short and choppy sentences. The mystery here, I think it was impossible to figure it out on your own. It was kind of that type of story. Yeah, I didn't think that was great. I liked kind of some of the ending, but I don't think it was done very well. There's this story about the scion of Atlantis, and this was pretty okay. It's kind of pulpy. It's about a guy trying to stop this dude who's trying to like raise Atlantis up again, and yeah, it was fine. Yeah. And then we had the Onmijujo's Inheritance. This is like Japanese, built pretty well. It's about this father who's kind of this priest healer type of dude, and his son. They've been kicked out of the Japanese capital, so they're just roaming the countryside. They're very poor, they're very hungry, and they like exercise. They don't exercise, but the father ends up giving his life to save the daughter of this like daimyo so that his son can marry her and whatever. And like I thought it was written pretty well. The Golden Barnacle. This one is pretty standard. It's like there's this mythical storm. The crew starts like being covered in barnacles. It ends up like destroying them. It's a little Lovecraft. We have the Quantum Death Determiner. This was bad. This was very, very bad. Where our main character is like an investigator, and there's people that are dying, and their hearts are being cut out of them, and we're like, it's a shorter one, so like the mystery is, so you can kind of guess who the bad guy is at the start, but there's this device, the Quantum Death Determiner, and if this device touches you, it'll go like red, you will die of violent death, green, you will die of natural causes, gray, it's suicide, like blue is accident, right? And it completely cuts the tension later on when there's this hostage situation, and the main character's love interest has the device fall on her, and it points to green, so that he knows that she's going to die of natural causes, and like this guy isn't going to be the one to kill her here and now. Completely kills tension. This is so cheap. This is very bad. And also they have a lot of faith in this device when like the creator of it was like kind of called a mad scientist earlier. So I don't love this. And it's like maybe they felt that the device wouldn't work, but then they take it at face value later on when the device says that the killer is going to commit suicide. So they do believe in the device. So I don't know. That's very bad. In artistic perspective, this was great. This is about a sculptor who has been like turned into a robot, and he serves like this mad wizard up in this tower, and he kind of has some memories, and he can no longer like sculpt. All he can do is like really shovel snow because his body's just not built for it anymore. I thought this was great. Valiant Storm by John A. Douglas. This is about like a group of clones. They're all like clones of one guy, and they're working together to like break into this facility and steal a bunch of shit to like make clones to make like more stable clones. So that was interesting. I did think that was like a really good premise. The Boy Who Loves Stories. This is about like a boy who tells stories to this dragon so the dragon doesn't eat him. Thought that was all right. Angels of Light. This was good. This is about people. Long ago, aliens came to Earth, and they kind of slowly but surely took over everything. And there's some humans that resist it, but other humans just kind of go along with it, even though the aliens are doing like kind of evil shit. Yeah, I like that one. And that's kind of it. There are like 2 comics in there. Retel's Ancestors. That one I don't think was great. A Sage of Sunsets. That one was like orcs or whatever in the kind of this fantasy world. That one was better done. Like I thought that was all right, kind of interesting. Overall, I don't have too much to say on it. I thought it was like fine. Like I guess I'd put this like a lower tier than kind of the other Anvil stuff, and I might maybe focus more on more things that are like kind of on this side of things and not really do the kind of conservative-ish guys. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that. Some of it was still fine. You know, there's definitely like good pieces in there, but I feel like I should kind of spend my time more on this side of things and reviewing that stuff rather than here's like some normie stuff, which I think is okay, but it's not like ours, kind of a deal. Yeah, this is kind of a more negative week, but that just kind of happens. I would say Improvidence is definitely good. It's worth your time. It's like $5, like 2 hours to read, if that. Definitely some intriguing stuff going on. If you like poetry, there's some stuff. Meme, definitely a mixed bag on that one. There were some like amusing parts to it, but I don't think it went like as crazy as it could have. And then there's just an issue of audience. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I don't think like dissidents would really care for it that much. They might, but I don't think it's crazy enough for them. And then it's like kind of bogged down for like the non-people in the know. You know what I mean? Okay. Then Anvil was just okay. It was just okay, but I think because issue 3 was delayed for some time, that I was expecting more. And then the first 2 stories were just like all right, not great. I feel like maybe if one of the stronger ones was the lead story, I would have, I think I started on a bad foot with that. Anyways, other stuff that I've watched lately. I watched a few movies. I saw The Train yesterday. It's like this black and white movie. It actually has Paul Scofield from A Man for All Seasons, which is a great movie that you can watch for free on BitChute. But he's like this Nazi. He's trying to like save this degenerate art as the Nazis are fleeing Paris. And it's about like the French resistance and like their trains, and they're trying to stop this art from being taken out. I thought it was kind of boring, paint by the numbers, nothing really to talk about. I watched Thelma and Louise for free. I'll add for free. And it felt honestly tame compared to like propaganda today. It's definitely subversive. It's definitely a fuck you to like men. But I think just by today's standards, because it's been like 30-ish years since it came out, it feels like somewhat tame. You know what I mean? Like I think a modern remake of it would be a lot more hateful. So it's not even like, I don't even feel like that strongly about it. So I don't even want to do like a hate video or anything on it. It was just kind of bad. And then I also watched The Great Outdoors, which is written by John Hughes, and it has John Candy and Dan Aykroyd, and I really like Uncle Buck. Uncle Buck is a white film, but The Great Outdoors is not very funny. It's not very good. There's some good parts to it. I will say it's like a John Hughes movie, you know, and it's got John Candy. And it's very wholesome. It's not like the best, but you know what I mean? But I got The Great Outdoors when I bought Uncle Buck on DVD. It was like, it came with 2 movies, so I'm like, fuck it, I'll watch The Great Outdoors. But yeah, it's just not great for like comedies, you know what I mean? Like Uncle Buck, very good. Tommy Boy, excellent. But this one, there's a reason why people don't really talk about it. That being said, I would rather like engage with something like The Great Outdoors, which is still like, at least it's not degenerate, you know, at least it's not subversive. It's still like a white family. And it's just overall like nice compared to just like engaging with like more modern media or like modern movies, right? Because we have people making good stuff. But with them, it's just like a lot of movies are just like subversive and hateful. And it's like, I'd rather like engage with kind of this not great, campy film versus just the subversive new thing. Whatever. I guess check it out if you really just have to see like everything with John Candy. And like some of it was fine, right? Some of it was fine. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. These Trough videos are probably going to be once a month. So probably the end of April will be the next one. Arbogast, he has a new book. Bizarre Archive 6 that just came out. I think Jordan Allen also has a book coming out in April. So I think those 3 will be a part of the next Trough, and then we might have a few wild cards in. So the Troughs are probably going to be typically longer, but also like once a month. I'm really pushing to have some like video game content done for next weekend. Hopefully it's kind of funny. You might like it, but I'm going to try incorporating other stuff just to break up the channel, like do a game, not necessarily in this rotation, but like a game, a movie, something, and then boom, we have a Trough once a month. So we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching, and White Pill Media out.